Hello, everyone. Welcome back to, R2Kast number 9. Almost 10 weeks we've been doing this. Well, no, they're 2 week slots, but 10. We've almost done 10 now. Really interesting guest again today. We've got Brian Scott of The Farmer's Life. If you want to say hello there, Brian.
Hello, Brian Scott. How are you guys?
So, if you're here, guys, thank you for coming along. Really interesting chat coming along. Me and Brian have just sent maybe 10 or 12 messages to each other. Don't really know each other, but sometimes that makes it quite fun. Sort of totally coming at it from a raw opinion, not really knowing what the crack is, sort of thing. So it can be quite good. But just before we get into the interesting stuff, I've obviously got to go over all the boring stuff. Just make sure to check out R2Kast Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify. The podcasts are obviously mainly on YouTube and Spotify, but for a lot of other farming content and stuff, Instagram and the Facebook are there. And also go check out Brian's page, The Farmer's Life. It's mental. It's huge. I think your actual Facebook page, is it not sitting about 80,000, 90,000 likes or something like that at the minute, Brian?
Yeah, 87, something like that. we have followers and not likes now, whatever that means. Facebook's always changed.
Is it different? Okay. I don't know. There's a lot of people watching you.
Yeah, I can't keep up either.
Yeah, it's pretty hard when there's that amount. So yeah, go check them out. You're on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm on Twitter quite a bit as well.
Twitter, cool. So go check those four out. I'll be honest, I follow on the Facebook and watch some of the videos on YouTube. But we'll get into a wee bit of that as we go along. But yeah, thanks for coming along. And we might as well get on into it. So who's Brian Scott then? What's your sort of story? I mean, where have you came from? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm fourth generation on our farm. Farm with my dad right now. I was farming with my dad and my grandfather. He passed about 3 years ago, but I was always going to farm and went to college with a degree in agriculture. And my last semester, I decided I was not going to farm, and I actually ended up working retail for almost 6 years before I decided I don't do regular jobs. So I decided to come back to the farm, and most of the year don't have anybody under me, and I don't have anybody above me either, which I like. So, and a lot more freedom than being out there in the regular world, I guess you could say.
For sure, yeah. I kind of did the same thing when I finished my agricultural degree. I went and worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. You might have heard of them, pretty big in your country. So yeah, I jumped over, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I actually did what you did. I realised what I wanted. So it's good to come back. So fourth generation. When did your great grandparents start with the farm then?
So we'll have to do some research and get some solid facts soon. But we think here where we farm in Indiana, I think in 2028 we'll be able to get our nice sign out front that we've been in this one spot for 100 years. So
right, okay,
been that long. And I was thinking about this earlier this week. My last name is Scott, but we are Irish, if that's okay.
Oh, no, it's fine. I don't take offense to it.
I think I'm not the best genealogist. I think somewhere or other we came from Ireland through Virginia to Kentucky and then landed here in the early 1900s.
Right, okay. Interesting stuff, yeah. And it's funny, we've been saying, I've obviously got, I'm in Scotland and I've got a lot of followers in Scotland, but we've been saying farm so far. We haven't actually really spoke about that farm, and I know when you do, I think a lot of my followers in Scotland are going to think, "Oh, that's a dream farm. I'd love that type of place." So what sort of size are we looking at, Brian? What type of farm have you got and that sort of thing?
Just a little bit under 2,500 acres, and that's basically 1,000 hectares for people that use hectares. And I tell people driving by, we look like your regular corn and soybean farm, but we are actually half for corn's regular field corn. The other half is what's called waxy corn. It's the starch content is different, and that comes with a little bit of extra work, but a premium price. And then we also grow a couple hundred acres of popcorn, and
Okay.
most of the soybeans we grow are for seed production. So a lot of what we grow is what other farmers will raise the following year, and then we do a little bit of wheat as well.
Okay. So the I've got a few questions, I guess, from that. What is waxy corn? What is that?
Yeah, so I'm on the spot. I'm not going to remember my percentages and everything.
Oh,
So
don't
like,
worry, don't worry, don't worry.
I think everybody knows corn is pretty starchy, and it's a much higher content of a certain type of starch. So it's it has a lot of uses in food, and it also has quite a few industrial uses. They tell us like uh, glue in cardboard boxes or the glue on the back of an envelope, stuff like that.
Oh, okay, that's quite interesting. It's funny you don't think of these things that we don't think of farmers producing these things. There's so many things. I always think, oh, I know quite a lot of what happens with production fields and stuff like that, and then you hear something like that. I honestly had no idea about that, so that's pretty cool. Um, you're saying there, Brian, that you produce seed soybean. Is those soybean varieties for feed, or are they for human consumption? What obviously you're producing the seed, but what are the varieties
Yeah,
for?
the about 2/3 of our beans are seed, so that's contracted with a seed company, and they don't always take them all. Um,
Right.
um, we actually only hauled like 3 loads of seed over the winter. So now that it's April, we're starting to think they're probably not going to take any more. So
Yeah.
we won't get the full premium, but we do get some premium still
Okay.
for storing them and all this kind of stuff. But the other third of our beans, which are commercial beans, we don't actually take those to an end user anywhere. So
Okay.
they could end up anywhere from the elevator we take them to. But
Right. Okay.
most of them around here are probably going to be crushed for oil.
Right. Yeah. Big market. Big market. Um. I mean, I've worked with wheat for 2 summers, but I know some sort of figures here and there. But what sort of tonnage per hectare or acre, whichever one you work in, are you looking at for the likes of soybean or for corn?
Yeah. Oh, I have a post-it note to translate all that in my
No,
truck,
it's
which is not here. But I can give you. Um, we look to be 200 bushel plus on corn, 200 bushel the acre,
okay.
and
Yep.
I want to say that comes to 11 or 12 tons. I could be totally wrong.
That sounds right. That sounds correct.
Yeah, and then
Is
we're mid 60 to 70 on soybeans.
okay. And are they just taking you were saying the elevator, so I take it you're taking them off with like the likes of an auger wagon and taking them elevating them up into a grain silo, is that right? And then they're taken from there, or how does that work?
Right. So we'll load into a auger wagon or grain cart in the field, and then our trucks are sitting on the road, and then we have about 175,000 bushel of storage on the farm. So there's
Okay.
depending on the yield, there's 75 to 100 truckloads that go to town during harvest.
75 to 100. That's great. That to me is just like that's mental.
Yeah, and I call us medium size in our part of the country. So
Yeah, I can imagine. So now you said that? What is like a sort of big farm? What sort of size are you looking for your?
we've got a few neighbors over 5,000. There's a couple guys knocking on 10,000 acres probably, and then of course you go the farther west you go out into the Great Plains, farms open up, and then you know they get real big in
Yeah.
Canada. I think they get kind of maybe not quite that big. I think northern Canada is maybe somewhat like Australia, where
Yeah.
there's nothing out there.
Yeah. It's crazy. Just vast areas of ground, and that's it. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling sometimes some of the places you see. And is there any? I'm kind of going a bit off course here at the minute, but is there any like stock around? Is there any livestock in your area, or is it mainly crop based?
Yeah, there's some cattle, not a whole lot. The main thing here is pigs. We're actually one of the top pork producers in the country. And last I knew, our county is actually the top in the state of Indiana for pork
All
production.
right.
So
Okay.
there's quite a few hog barns around here.
Yeah, I take it that's all inside type based. It's all.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had two large packing plants here within 20 miles of each other, and
Right.
they they both shut down at the same time last spring.
All right.
They had when there were a lot of hog plants having COVID problems
Okay.
last spring, last summer. So I
It's
think they ended up being closed for like 5 or 7 days instead of 2 weeks or something like that. But man, that stuff that gets backed up quick when
I can imagine.
you can't get the animals off the farm, and then they're getting too big for market. And it was we used to raise pigs, but we haven't for 15 years or so now. So
Right.
it's a totally different world than when we were doing it. Everything's contract now for the most part. You pretty much you own the barn, you don't own the pigs. You're just renting the space to grow them out.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's when those contracts get sort of convoluted, it can make it a lot more difficult to rear. So maybe it was a good decision there 15 years ago to jump off. But we might go into COVID later on. It's always quite an interesting discussion. But just for viewers and listeners that aren't really, what would I say, acquainted with arable farms, maybe don't know much about how arable farms work. What sort of, when does your year start? I assume starting sort of near drilling time. What time is that? And then how long is it until harvest from then?
Yeah, we're usually planting. We like to, if we picked a kind of ideal date, we'd shoot for like April 20th to start planting. We've been, last 2 years, we're actually pretty much right on that. And not 2 years, 1 year. 2019 was very, very late.
Okay.
It was raining a lot. We finished corn, I think June 3rd, and didn't even start soybeans until after that. So 2019 was an adventure, and you get kind of cabin fever because like just right now, the 1st of April, you're like, all right, kind of like everything's like getting to be nothing to do around the shop. Everything's wrapping up. Let's get in the field. And then we had to wait another 6 weeks a couple of years ago.
It's weird when you get that stage where you're almost ready to go and you just can't, like, you're like, no, that date's set, let's wait for it. So you aim to get the seeds in the ground at sort of 20th April. I take it there's no winter crops, that's all spring crops you're planting. There's no,
our wheat is winter wheat. We grow, everything here is soft red winter wheat.
Okay. And then everything else is spring apart from the wheat.
Yeah, pretty much. You go on north of here, maybe an hour, or get up into Michigan, you start seeing a lot of different, more specialty crops and produce and that kind of thing. But you don't really see that right where I'm at.
Right. Okay. And what sort of, so before the crops in the ground, are you ploughing? Or are you subsoiling?
We're pretty much all no-till anymore. We've kind of transitioned into that over the last several years. We actually have 4 fields we are going to till this spring because we've got a few. And I don't know if you guys do that over there. We've installed drainage in a bunch of those fields.
Okay.
And so those that don't know, basically we're putting a plastic pipe in the ground to drain water faster than, and not have it run off the top. And that gives us, like, one field we have, there's a pretty good spot that's often a 0 on yield. So now it will not be.
Yep.
So and tile is cheaper than more dirt is the way I explain it.
Okay. Yeah.
And so those, you can imagine you're putting depending on what you're doing, like a 4 to a 15-inch pipe in the ground that settles down. So it gets to be a little rough. So next year or two, we go back and smooth those out. But other than that, we're pretty much all no-till, and we're doing cover crops on about a quarter of the farm.
So just could you just sort of quickly elaborate, just so folk understand what no-till exactly means?
Yeah. So maybe in your part of the world, like I think people probably say direct seeding rather than no-till,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we are not doing any like plowing or cultivation between the harvest pass and the seeding pass. We're just it's totally undisturbed and we don't touch it.
And I assume that's good from a carbon perspective, Brian, because you're obviously not opening up that ground. You're not releasing carbon. You're sinking a lot of carbon into the ground there.
Right, and that's
Good.
that's becoming a hot topic lately. There's everybody's got some kind of carbon program. I haven't seen any I'm too excited about signing up for yet. It
Yeah,
seems like there's a lot of caveats and there's plenty of ways to probably not pay you. And some of them are actually, if you're already doing the stuff we're doing, you don't qualify. If
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're running full tillage and switch, you're good to go. But if you're already doing it, too bad.
yeah. Which surely goes against it all. Like if you're doing the right thing and you're sort of being a pioneer, if you will, and you're going ahead of the curve, surely that should be incentivized. But anyway,
Right.
let's not
Yeah,
go down that rabbit hole.
I've seen people joking on Twitter that they're posting pictures as their carbon credit tool as they're getting out the old moldboard plow, and they're gonna flip the whole field over so they qualify for the program and then go back to no-till,
Crazy,
which
isn't it?
which defeats
Yeah,
the purpose of the whole idea.
totally.
But
Oh,
that's
yeah.
kind of the way some of these programs seem to be set up.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's more about changing than sort of keeping the good stuff going. But anyway, that's it's a shame, but these things are the way they are, and we're not going to change them. I don't think. Um,
Yeah.
so that seed's in the ground. You've got that seed in the ground. It's planted, and what happens now between then and harvest time? What's involved then?
So we will about that time everything's getting a pre-emerge spray, and that will that'll be our most expensive spray pass because it'll have several things in it, and it'll have what's called residuals, so it will kill weeds that have not come up yet. And then we're with corn, we're done spraying generally. We're kind of a one and done on corn right about planting time. Uh, Beans we'll probably see in the late spring and summer, one or two more passes with glyphosate or something, depending on what trait package we have.
Yeah.
Gonna have some little different stuff this year. And then we have we just brought home our new fertilizer applicator this morning. I will go out when the corn's got 4 to 6 leaves on it, and we will put most of our nitrogen on at that time.
Okay. And is it just nitrogen? No P and K?
We are looking at that because we are switching with this new applicator. We've always run anhydrous ammonia. I don't know if you have any of that over there.
I'll be honest, I'm
I
not
don't
good on
think you do.
maybe.
Yeah, so that's a byproduct of natural gas production, and
Okay.
it's the most concentrated form of nitrogen, but it's based. I mean, you're using the same containers and everything. It's basically like handling liquid propane for the most part.
Okay.
So it's in a pressurized tank, but it's very very cold stuff, and you gotta. I tell people, I say I'm not scared of it, but you have to respect it.
Yeah.
Is one thing. So we are changing to liquid fertilizer now. So you can't really mix stuff with the anhydrous. So we are now thinking maybe we're going to have some more nutrients in that mid-season pass because
Okay.
we're able to change some stuff up now that we've gone to liquid.
Yeah. And what's the difference between liquid and, I assume you're using prilled or something like that before? What's the difference between liquid and solid fertilizer?
Yeah, there's not, as far as nitrogen, there's not a lot of that done around here. We have one neighbor that does top dress quite a bit of corn that just goes out and spreads dry, and it does get a little burn on it in the center of the wheel
Right.
track, but that's just cosmetic. It goes away in a week or two. So there's all kinds of different ways to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And then yeah, harvest time. What sort of kit are you running for that then?
Yeah, and that'll be usually late September when we get started. So
Yeah.
we run. We traded combines over the winter. So we're gonna have a S780 Deer, and this is gonna be our
Yep.
first machine on tracks. So we'll
Okay.
see how we like that. And we run a 12 row corn head, which is on 30-inch rows. That's 30 feet wide,
Yep.
and we run a 40-foot draper for the beans and the wheat.
Okay. 40 foot. Yeah. I'm trying to think what we were running before. It was, I say we, not on our farm when I did harvest. I think it was 10.25 meters, which is 34ish. It was a class
Yeah,
750.
yeah, that'd probably be. We
Yeah.
used to run a 35-foot head. Yeah.
Yeah. That
Um,
was the Draper one I'm talking about, more for the sort of wheat and that. But
oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, 40. It's funny. It always takes me. I've got to go back to that header that I've seen and think how much more is that, so I can sort of think in my head how big it is. And just the one you're running there, Brian. Yeah, just
Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
The one that does all the beans and the wheat. And then we've had a group visit from Germany a couple years ago, and so they're walking through the tool shed and all our. We got dual tires on all the tractors and everything, and they're all saying, "No, you can't do that here, can't do that here," because unlike here, you guys are driving through all the little villages and
Yeah.
small curvy roads, and we've got pretty wide open space compared to what we see in Europe.
And the field size as well. I mean, some of the field sizes that were in Essex when I was there were massive in my head. But what's the biggest field you're working on there, Brian? Roughly.
Our biggest field's 277 acres, so that's a little over a hectare's 2.47. So
Yes, it's 120.
yeah,
Uh,
120, 25, something like that.
yeah.
And we've got another one right at the shop at the home base that's 250 and 166 across the road from that. So that's a nice little piece. And then we've got two 15-acre fields. So
It's funny when you say little. Our biggest silage field is 13 acres, so
yeah,
gives you a bit of an idea. But
yeah.
yeah,
The one 15-acre is a triangle, and when I make one lap around the outside in the planter, I'm halfway done.
so what size is the planter? What size is it?
It's a 24 row 30-inch, so that's 60 foot,
Yep.
and we plant the corn and beans both with that.
Yeah. Yeah. That and the sprayer. What's it?
The sprayer, we hire all that out to retailers. So
Okay.
we actually don't do our own spraying. We are thinking about it, but it keeps getting bumped down the list as other projects come up. So there's days in the summer where like I really wish I had a sprayer, and then there's issues with sprayer, and I'm like, well, I'm glad it's not mine. It's their problem.
Exactly. It's always the case, isn't it? Contractor against owner. What's the benefit there?
Yeah.
Do you guys need in the States? Do you need a license to spray? We need a pesticide application license. Is that the case?
Yeah, so I have even though we don't do our own spraying, I have a private applicator's license. I need that to purchase the restricted use pesticides, even though we're not the ones that are applying them.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Because you've got so we've got one where you need it to buy and to store, and then you've got a separate one that's for like boom sprayers, a separate one for knapsack, that sort of thing. So that sounds pretty similar, really.
Yeah, you go to get it the first time, you go to school for like a whole day, and then basically as long as you go to like a few hours of training a year, which there's always meetings you can go to, you get 1 point for your license. You get 5 points in the life of your license. You don't have to retest again.
Okay, that makes sense. That's actually quite good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. we're obviously talking about spraying there. There's a big thing in the EU is we don't know the sort of future of glyphosate. Is that a fear in the UK, in the US? Sorry, is there potential of losing Roundup or?
It's talked about, but I don't think we're anywhere close to where Europe is at on that
Yeah.
stuff. I was said that group came over from Germany. I was with a group of social media people. We went with Bear over to Germany, and
Okay.
we got to see a couple farms. And I just always remember we were talking to one farmer because we all thought it was really neat because everybody had the brick barns with the tiled roofs and everything. Like, wow, those are really cool. Nobody has that here. And the guy goes, yeah, but you don't have to farm with Dark Ages technology either. So, but yeah, they were doing the thing, showing off Bear's thing about, I mean, cleaning the last little tiny bits of stuff out of sprayer, having like kind of this big concrete pad you wash the sprayer on, and all that water goes into kind of like a bioreactor. And after so much time, you can take the dirt out of the reactor. I'm adding it up, and I was like, this is like a 6-figure, like nobody, there's like zero return on investment on that. Nobody here would buy that for getting the last couple grams of chemical out of your sprayer.
I mean, the laws on it must be a bit relaxed. I mean, I obviously understand the reasons why maybe glyphosate is getting zoned out. There's a lot of reasons to back it up, but it could be potentially damning to the arable and in turn the stock industry, you know. But I was just interested in where you guys sort of stood on it.
I think everybody here understands. They probably meant we did overuse Roundup, but it was the only trait out there for a while.
Yeah.
And it worked very, very, very well. And it still works really well, but there's a few weeds that you just can't kill with it anymore.
Okay.
So we need to make use of other traits and chemicals or cultural practices to tackle those problems.
So what sort of weeds are causing you problems? What?
The worst for us would be mare's tail. Some people call that horseweed, but it looks like a horse's tail. And water hemp is a very tough one. That's the worst for us. And then we have Palmer amaranth, which we get some of. We got a scare of it several years ago, but it's never quite taken to our climate like it has in the southern states, where they're hiring like crews of 20 guys or something to come walk fields and pull that by hand. It's bad.
Yeah.
And it's like one plant will have several 100,000 seeds on it.
Jeez. You just can't compete with that. You just can't.
No, it's hard. And they're coming up with, I know, I think maybe there's a couple units here in the States. I want to say it's called like the seed destructor or something like that. So it's basically like a thing is developed in Australia. It's like basically a hammer mill you put on the back of the combine. So all the trash that comes out the back runs through that and the seeds get destroyed. But I've said the only problem with that, to destroy a seed, you have to have a weed that has gone to seed.
Yeah,
so
of course.
It's in that crop year, it's already done all the damage that it was going to do.
Of course. Yeah, it's like almost a preventative for future years.
Well, maybe you're looking ahead at that point.
Yeah. And is there any pesticides out there that are treating against those weeds you're talking about there? Or aside from Roundup, you think that's tricky, but
there are. So we've got dicamba tolerant and 2,4-D tolerant soybeans now.
Right.
The dicamba has been an issue here. There's been some issues with that, and it not staying where you lay it down, and getting into your neighbor where it doesn't need to be. So we've used it and have had zero issues with it. I think some of the problem with that was, it's been 4, maybe 5 years now. When they first put those soybeans out, they released the soybeans, but they didn't release the chemical till a year later. Okay. So from talking to people online, a lot of where they're hiring those crews to hand weed, some of those farmers went and used old generic versions of dicamba, which aren't the new formulation that's supposed to be less volatile, because they were so desperate. I mean, I think they've raised it to like, I think $25,000 now. The fine for spraying off label was like $1,000. So guys were like, these weeds are, I'll pay the $1,000 to spray the weeds.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, they ended up drifting onto neighbors that didn't have that trait. And the first year was pretty ugly, and we're seeing a few more restrictions every year on when, like for us on our bean, we can't spray dicamba after June 20th. So,
okay. Yeah.
And a lot of times the water hemp is coming on late in the season. So there's nothing, beans are much tougher to spray than corn.
Okay.
With what's available to you. So late season weed control in beans can be difficult.
Right. Yeah. No, interesting. I mean, I don't know. I know very little about this. It's very interesting. I'm sitting here quite excited to hear about it. So, what sort of system do you run in the regards? Sort of like, do you use? I think you've got GPS systems employed the whole way through, Brian. I take it. And are you following some kind of controlled traffic farming system, or I was trying to gauge the size of your headers and your fertilizer spreaders and that, and see if they were up. But
yeah. So as far as corn, we're pretty controlled traffic. 60-foot seeding and putting fertilizer on it, 60 foot, and then harvest, we're half the width of that. So we're kind of keeping on track there. We cut, a lot of people do this. Soybeans we cut on an angle to the row because it just works a lot better. So that kind of destroys all hope of your controlled traffic.
Yeah.
at that point. But yeah, so we found when we really started no-tilling more, some of those high traffic areas where we're loading trucks and things like that, we actually went back and bought a subsoiler after we got rid of the one we had, because we could see on those GPS yield maps we were starting to suffer after a few years by not going back and addressing that mechanically.
Yeah.
So we kind of selective ripping now is what I say we do.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think there's this push to no-till and also sort of in gardening systems like no-dig and all that sort of thing. And
yeah.
I totally see the merits, and I think it's great, but I do sometimes think you have to tear it up. I think that has to be in there somewhere, maybe,
yeah.
But
I like to, if like last fall we did a little more, because last fall was very, very dry. So when it's dry, that's your chance to do a good job with some mechanical correction. So that if we were going to do it, that was the time to get some done.
And how do GPS systems work? So I have a bit of an idea about this and how they all work, but you'll definitely know better. So if you explain to viewers how do GPS work and how does it all twin in together, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we've been doing that since the fall of 2009 was the first time we ran something with AutoTrack, and there's farms have been doing it since the late 90s. So it's been around for a minute. I kind of joke, like, everybody's getting excited there might be self-driving cars soon. I was like, well, the tractor's been doing it for almost 30 years. Old farm boys are way ahead of you. But no, it's pretty simple. It can get more complicated depending on the shape of the field and stuff, but basically for all our stuff. So if I'm going into a new field and want to create a new track, so you just pull up, so your little dome on top of the tractor. If you ever see the little yellow dome on a John Deere tractor, that's your GPS receiver. And
is that Green Star? Is that the name of the?
Yep.
Green Star, yeah.
And you'll just punch in what type of track you want. Most of the time it's going to be a straight track. You can do curved tracks as well. There's different things. You select an A point, and then later you just make a B point, and it snaps a chalk line between the two of them. So let's say if my planter is 60 foot wide, it's going to have that chalk line every 60 feet across the field, and you'll turn around and catch it and be perfectly right on top of it going back. And that is very nice. I mean, almost everybody's on GPS now in this part of the country, but it's almost hard to explain until somebody does it. You don't realize how much mental and physical energy you use just trying to keep the tractor straight until you don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And then, so I find myself, not all the time, I mean, sometimes, yeah, you can sit there and watch YouTube or Netflix sometimes, but you can actually spend a lot more time paying attention to what you're really doing and not just trying to drive in a straight line. And then it also, once you're on GPS, that's the cool part to show people, but it opens up a whole nother suite of technologies. Section control's probably the best one. So like my planter is 24 rows, but we've upgraded it so each meter is controlled with an electric motor. So I really have 24 individual planters. So if I've got a field with an angled side, I plant that angle first, and then as I come into it, each individual of those rows is going to shut off when it gets to where it's already been. So that there's no, and then apply that not just to seed, but chemicals and fertilizers as well. So that's, you're getting environmental and a economic return there.
Yeah, hugely. What did you call that there? Sorry, Brian. We call that variable rate technology over here.
Yeah, VRT, yeah. We call it that. Section control or swath control.
Section control, that's what we said, yeah. No, it's amazing. Really. So how do you like drone map that field before that happens, or how do you input that data that it says, oh, there's no ground here, or this needs less nitrogen? How do you input that data?
Oh, that, yeah. So we don't do the whole farm at once. So about a quarter or a third of the farm we soil test every year.
Okay.
And that is broken down into zones, based on elevation and the soil type and different things. And then what's called a prescription can be created from there for seed or fertilizer. So a lot of times we have really good phosphorus tests on a lot of our ground. So a lot of times most of the zones in those fields will say, they'll call for 0 phosphorus. So the dry fertilizer spreader will go out there, and let's say a regular 80-acre field, it might only be putting phosphorus on 25 of them.
Yeah. It's a massive economic saving. Massive. Like over the course of your farm. Yeah. Huge.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And then, apply that to basically anything you're putting in a field anymore. And that's adds up. When we went, the planter we had before this one, it would shut the rows off in pairs. And now that we're shutting them off individually, my acre counter was dropping an acre or two in fields.
Right.
Which I was just going from 2-row shut off to single row shut off. I was surprised at that's a lot. When you're getting into $250 to $300 for a bag of corn that covers 2.5 acres, you're talking some serious money over 1,000 acres of corn.
Yeah, you're almost able to see extra tonnage of corn that you're getting paid for instead of paying for your operating costs. That's brilliant.
Right, and it's not just the extra seed you put in the ground. Those areas you overlap don't yield as well because there's too many plants there.
Yeah.
So you're winning on both ends of that.
Yeah, it's I'm from a livestock farm in Scotland where there is obviously arable systems and there's big kit and stuff, but I focused on this in my masters and it always interested me, and it's actually really cool to speak to someone who's employing it all. Just when we're talking sort of, it's obviously you said it was a medium-sized operation for where you are. How you said you worked with your dad? How many people is involved in the farm? I take it harvest time there's more people.
Right. Part of the reason we've gone to no-till, I was kind of wanting to try it, more of it anyway. We had a full-time guy, Randy, that worked for us for 20 years. He unfortunately passed about 6 years ago, and I had come back to the farm 5 or 6 years before that, and we had more. And my grandpa was still alive, so there was
Yeah,
four of us there every day, and sometimes that was almost too many.
yeah,
So what the no-till has let us do is basically until harvest, Dad and I can do everything
yeah,
because we're just putting seed in the planter and going. We're not trying to time how far we are behind the field cultivators, so there's just enough moisture in the ground, but not too much, and it's not too dry, and we just we go, and then yeah, we actually have in the fall. It's Dad and I. I'm in the combine. Um, Dad's kind of, if we're doing corn, Dad's directing traffic and running the dryer, grain dryer back at the farm, and my brother-in-law kind of has a lot of freedom in the work he does, so he will usually take a month or so and drive truck for us. Have a guy I used to go to high school with that is actually the assistant police chief in town, but
okay,
he takes about 6 weeks of paid vacation the last 3 years, and he drives truck for us.
right,
And one of our landlords drives a grain cart.
okay,
So
yeah,
that's a nice little crew we've got right now. So
yeah,
that works out
brilliant.
well.
Yeah, it's a big saving in labour as well. The sort of no-till. I never even considered that. Yeah, cool.
It really is. And I've been telling this story of a couple years ago where we had kind of a wet fall, and you like to avoid doing tillage when it's wet if you can, because you can actually do more harm than good. And I remember it was Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Eve. You could go on social media and see guys out with their disc grippers like, well, this is as good as it's going to get, so we're going to give it a go on Thanksgiving Day after we eat turkey, and then Christmas Eve before we go to bed. And as we had switched all the no-till, I was kind of like, well, this is kind of nice. I'm not concerned about doing damage because I wasn't going to go out there anyway, and
Yeah, yeah,
I'll just
brilliant.
take a nap and eat more turkey.
More time for the wife and kids as well. It's good, good.
Yep.
Which I think we often forget. I think the farming industry is good at forgetting the sort of you've also got to switch off for a time.
Yep, and we've been pretty good about that. Baseball season's about to get started, so um, we shut the planter down and go to the baseball game. We'll just stay out later if we have to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, good. It's just one more question. What you mentioned, sort of the wet times and whatnot. What sort of weather can you expect in a year where you are, Brian? Is it, you know?
Yeah, we will go. We've had a couple of mild years. We actually had quite a bit more snow than we have the last few. We actually had stayed cold for a while. We had a foot of snow on the ground for a month here,
Right.
which is a little unusual, but it was also that was like the only moisture we had till a couple weeks ago. We had a very, very dry winter. But we go from here in Indiana. We, of course, we'll be on Fahrenheit, not Celsius, but we'll go from, we can be 20 below zero and we can be up to 100 degrees. So we can make that swing in a year's time.
The 20 below zero, 100 degrees is 39, is it? 30?
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably close to 40, something like that.
Yeah, and then 20 below zero will be, I'm not even going to try that. I don't have a clue.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, we are actually on spring break last week from school, and we took the boys down to Disney in Florida, and it was 75, 80, and then the last 2 days it was getting to be in the mid 90s, and it wasn't that bad. It ended up being a little cloudy, but I was kind of like, my body is not ready for this because I came from 40 to 90, so
quite a change.
Yeah.
We are sitting at about, oh god, I couldn't even give you a temperature at the minute, but we've probably just hit about maybe 15 degrees Celsius today, and as I said, I'm getting a bit of sunburn, and you know we're different. We're built different. But yeah, no, I saw you were at Disneyland, and that sort of takes me on, I guess, to the sort of last section. It's really interesting to talk about the farm, and I could literally sit here and talk for hours because it interests me a lot. But the reason I knew you'd been to Disneyland was the sort of social media following you've had there, Brian. Guess we get into that. When did you start social media? Has that been a thing that's been on for a while, or?
I started in it was 2011, the beginning of 2011. So I guess it's been 10 years now that I think about it. I started with my blog, which I think my first few posts were like a paragraph and no pictures or anything like that. And I was the guy that was not going to get on Facebook. And yeah, now here I have this big Facebook page to manage and all this other stuff. But it's there. I've talked to other people. I'm not alone in this. I have days where I'm like, I could just delete all those accounts and be done. But then I go back and like, I've had those trips to Germany. I've got to go to DC several times, and then all the friends I have now that I wouldn't otherwise. That's some days that's what keeps me going. Is the stuff I would not have gotten into otherwise.
Yeah, and so did it start with a blog, and then did that go into Facebook? And what was the sort of transition?
Yeah, I think Facebook was next. I think I had a Twitter I didn't use for like 2 years after I started it. And then I've tried to get a little bit more serious about YouTube the last couple of years. And then I focused last year on kind of learning how to monetize some stuff to make you get to a point where it's big enough for like either I need some return on this or I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I think early on when I was starting, that kind of thing was kind of taboo. And
it would have been then. Yeah,
you were looked down upon to try to make $1, but now it's kind of, that's almost where you need to be to make it worth your time.
Yeah, I think it's a recognized diversification. If before it would be have a farm shop, have a second job, whatever. But doing YouTube and the likes of running ads here and there is a legitimate way to earn a second income. And I in no way look down on folk for doing it. I think it's brilliant. I had one question about that. What was that going to be? Just one last thing about that. You've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Is there any that you enjoy more? Do you enjoy pushing anything in particular, or what sort of thing there?
I think lately I've enjoyed trying to figure out YouTube some, just because Facebook's been there the longest and it's by far the biggest.
Yeah,
it's easier in some ways because I know the content is going to get seen. It's funny because I'm basically putting the same videos on Facebook and YouTube, the long form videos, and I'm getting if I get to 1,000 views on YouTube, I'm pretty happy, and I'll get that in a few minutes on Facebook. So it's frustrating that it's not happening the same on YouTube as Facebook, but
YouTube is much harder to get views, but the views you get on YouTube are incentivized more. They're
you can make. Right now, I would make more on a YouTube video from ads, on a Facebook video. But like, if you broke it down like per 1,000 views or something, YouTube is a lot higher.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was trying to say, but I couldn't get the words out.
And I thought I might give it a try. Give it a try once planting starts, and there's a lot more interesting posts. My Facebook is eligible for like people to do like a monthly subscription, which I would need to. I would definitely need to provide some kind of like exclusive content, be kind of like a Patreon type thing. But I'm kind of like, who is going to pay $5 to see more of me? But like, for all I know, 10,000 people are going to do it. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, so many folks say, who would do this who would do whatever to watch me? Yeah. Well,
Right.
90,000 folk have went out and clicked something to follow you. Yes, not 90,000 folk are going to pay $5, as you say, a month, but
Right.
some,
But
some are.
if 100 of them did, it'd be worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, oh, maybe I could just do like sit down one Sunday night or month, and you can come on the private chat and ask me whatever. That
yeah, and
you
folk
wouldn't see on.
love that.
Yeah.
Some folk that are doing that sort of thing run like an exclusive podcast.
Right.
It's like the thing they do. They don't do a podcast, but they do a podcast for their Patreons. There's loads of different things you can do, but yeah, it's interesting how many sort of avenues there is that can be taken. But in sort of in an effort to not go long, we've went 50 minutes so far, which is brilliant. It's just sort of peak time. There's two questions I always ask folk before we sort of sign off. But first off, thank you very much for coming on, Brian. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. It's obviously just coming up for sort of busy planting time there. So yeah, thank you for that first off. But the questions I ask everyone is where do you see yourself in 5 years? And if you had any tips for folk coming into farming, let's sort of focus on arable farming. What would they be?
Yeah. So in 5 years, I probably think kind of financially, we've just done. Interest rates are very, very low here. So we've basically refinanced the house and every farm mortgage we have. And we actually just got done switching banks, which was kind of that's a lot of paperwork. Got close loans out and start new loans, and we consolidated loans. And then, there's all kinds of programs out there now with COVID relief type stuff, and we're looking into some of that and just trying to leverage ourselves. Great. The thing I say about our farm, we are a little different in that we own about 80% of what we farm, which is pretty high. Most people probably rent around half or more of the land they farm. So we are in a very good position that probably the best thing for us to do financially long term is not buy much more ground. And just we could have a ultra low land cost, which is currently our largest cost, but which we could drop almost down to essentially just our property taxes if we just sit still and keep paying those mortgages. So that's my long-term financial view. Is our path to growth is to not grow physically.
Okay, that makes total sense. Yeah. And would you look at trying to buy up that extra 20%, or would you be happy renting it?
One of the farms we rent is furthest from home and our worst soils. So if the right piece is close to home for the right price, we would look at replacing that.
Right, got you. Yeah, that makes sense. And tips for folk that are wanting to maybe come into arable, or even, I mean, obviously coming into owning and renting arable land's a huge thing, but even just getting started.
I have been very, very lucky. I make sure people know that I was always when I left the farm, I was always able to come right back. We didn't have to make any big changes for the operation for me to come back. And most people that come from farms don't even have that. And to start from scratch, I've gotten to know through social media some first generation farmers, and that's pretty impressive considering. I mean, if you just wanted to farm 100 acres of corn and rent or buy some older machinery to do it, I mean, you're pushing into $1 million territory easily.
Yeah.
And you can't make a living on 100 acres.
Yeah.
Not on a grain farm. So it is. I've read stories of people that they want to farm. They don't come from a farming family. They will go around and talk to farmers, maybe retiring or something, and maybe work for them or rent the ground and the equipment from them to get their foot in the door. And I'm not the expert because I didn't have to do that, but if you can swing it as a first generation grain farmer, you're doing something right.
Yeah, and I like the first generation thing. I'm trying to think when this podcast goes out. 2 podcasts ago, we had a couple called Our Farming Journey. That's not their names. That's what they're sort of like. You're the farmer's life. Their farming journey. Rachel and Jake, and that's what they've done. They've started out from not having a farm, and they're doing well. And I couldn't commend folk that do it more. I'm in the same position as yourself, Brian. We're not a grain farm. We're a stock farm. But that when I was at uni, if I had off time, I could always come back, get some work done. It was always there, and it's such a lucky position to be in. But I think what you're saying, if you can do it, fair play to you from kicking off.
Yeah. One guy I know in the southern half of the state, I've gotten to know a little bit. He's first generation farmer, and he farms about twice as much as we do. But I think he said he rented his first field from a guy when he was 14.
Right. That's brilliant. Oh God. Yeah. Fair play. 14. Jesus.
Yeah.
Is it so he made some money off a lemonade stand and then went and put it into land?
Right, yeah. turned it into dirt.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thank you. I don't. Maybe you've got anything else to say, Brian. If not, I think that would be a good time to cut it.
Yeah, and thanks for the invite. It's been fun.
No, not at all. Thank you very much for having me on. No, you didn't have me on. Thank you for coming on. From me around. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Taking time out your day. I know you said you sort of take Saturday afternoons off when you're not in the field, but still, you didn't have to spend it with some branded bearded lad from Scotland. So yeah, I appreciate that, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll keep in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone that came along as well, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for what will be the 10th edition, R2Kast number 10. I don't know who it is yet. So we'll see you then. Thanks for coming along, and thanks again to Brian.